for joining us this evening. Thanks for joining us this evening. We're really excited to have this opportunity to talk to you about Klamath Bird Observatory, Observatory de Aves Mantequilla, and our Banders Without Borders exchange program. So we're going to be showcasing the women in science behind our programs. And then we are also going to be talking quite a bit about our past and upcoming trip to Brazil. And so it should be an interesting evening. For many of you that don't know me, I'm Jamie Stevens. I'm the Director of Conservation at Klamath Bird Observatory, and I will be co-leading the trip to Brazil with Luiza. And so for those of you that might be unfamiliar with our organization, essentially at KBO, we study birds and their habitats to ensure the sustainability of healthy populations and to reverse the declines of those that are in trouble. And we share that information with people that are implementing conservation, restoration, land management on the ground, as well as the community, really looking to instill that kind of conservation ethic through the lens of birds. And so we work across, so a lot of our work is rooted in the Klamath-Siskiyou bioregion. Our office is in Ashland, Oregon. A lot of our field studies are rooted between the Klamath Basin, the Rogue Basin, and Northern California. But we work much more broadly than that as well, with field studies across Oregon, Washington, and Northern California. And so some of that is partnership-based, and some of that is our own field studies. The idea being that we're trying to study birds across their ranges. And so that kind of snapshot of the Pacific Northwest is where we have a lot of shared breeding birds. And then we work internationally across the ranges of our shared birds. And so our international programs include primarily capacity building and training. And so we don't do any international research, but we partner with international researchers to study our shared birds. And so one of the programs that has been central to KBO since our inception is our bird banding program. And that is a really intensive training program that has allowed us to do a lot of our international capacity building. And so we'll have a crew that comes here in the spring and essentially travels throughout the summer to 6 to 10 different banding stations, learning the science of bird banding, but also really learning the field biology components and all the different things that go into being a field biologist. And so it's a pretty cool program. And we've had a lot of amazing people move through it. And that is how I had the opportunity to meet Luiza and her partner, Pedro. And so we've known them a long time. They were at the KBO program a number of years ago. She's probably going to share some of that history with you. But for now, just kind of a plug that what we're trying to do with that program is help young and mid-professionals think about bird conservation and learn some methodologies. And really the gold star is when we see people go back to their home countries and take that and run with it with their own programs. And so having a handful of folks that have gone through our programs go back to their home countries and start bird observatories, bird monitoring networks is just this really amazing success to what we're trying to build collectively. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about my experiences with the Brazil trip at the end of the presentation. But for now, I was just going to do that brief introduction, pass it to Shannon. And then again, I'll share a little bit of my own experiences with the travel after Luiza talks with you. So for now, I will pass it to Shannon.
Hi, I'm Shannon Rio, and I took the trip to Brazil 2 years ago. I knew I wanted to go and see what Luiza and Pedro were doing in their home country because I had spent time with them when they worked here at the Klamath Bird Observatory. I also had an intention to get to know Jamie better. I had always wanted to spend 10 days with Jamie as her wonderful science conservation director, and I got to do that. What I didn't expect to happen was that once we got to Brazil, how enveloped and taken care of we were by this community of people who were the friends of Luiza, Pedro, and OAMa. Um, it was like traveling as a family. Um, we were met at the airport by a female guide named Sammy, who took exquisite care of us. And then we spent 10 days exploring Brazil in a very intimate way. Being a tourist is always kind of hard when you don't speak the language, but Luisa made it so that we could go to museums, we could eat at local restaurants, we could hear local musicians. We went to the first national park in Brazil. We traveled with Luisa, her mother, her sister, her baby, and spent some time with Pedro. It was a very amazing experience that culminated each day to get more and more intimate. And then halfway through the trip, we went to OAMa, which is really this birthplace of conservation that Luisa and Pedro and her people created to band and do education. It was exquisite. It's very remote and very gorgeous. So by the end of the 10 days, I think we felt like we had not only had a very profound experience that really did change our lives, where we felt inspired and we met people that made us feel hopeful, which is very important in the times we live in. But that also we participated in a trip where the money we spent for the trip was going to fund the people we met those 10 days to do the work they did. That was like, oh my gosh, it was just like so deep. So now I didn't really think I would go back because I'm just so busy. But when the trip came this year, I realized, kind of in the spirit of Luisa, that I would ask my 42-year-old son, who's a special ed teacher in Illinois, and my 16-year-old granddaughter to come with me on this trip, because it really is about family, and it's about learning from one another and, uh, you know, being connected as a world, as a one world, place. So anyway, I'm going, and I'm excited to go again and be with Luisa and her family and friends.
Thanks, Shannon, for those words. So, Jamie, should I start?
I think we're ready for Luiza to share her screen and give the presentation. And then, as I mentioned, I'll share a few more thoughts about the trip, and Shannon will as well after the presentation.
Entire screen, not single screen. Here it is. Let me know if you can see it properly. Is it working already?
Yes, it looks great.
Okay. So hi everyone. Thanks for being here with us. Thank you for inviting me here. And I will talk through a short presentation. I wanted to share, as we are talking about Women in Science Day, I wanted to share not only about the field trip, but also all the path that took me to where I am now and how we are connected with Climate Bird Observatory, why we have these beyond borders connection. And we call these this program that Jamie mentioned, the of exchange and training. Like KBO is training people internationally, and we started sending also people that we are training here to KBO. So we like to call it birds and vendors beyond borders. So we know that we have birds beyond borders, but now we also want to have vendors beyond borders. And all that with science and outreach for conservation. That's about a little bit about what both KBO and OAMa does, science and outreach for conservation. So, but first, let me see if I can move this here. So, not moving. Okay, 1-4, just too many. Just a sec. Okay, so I wanted to start presenting myself. This one in the picture is me, and the tiny one in my backpack is a big part of me. And here we are in the field trip 2 years ago. My name is Luiza Figueira. I am a Brazilian biologist. I'm also an ecologist, and I have been working under the umbrella of ornithology since 2012 now. I am also a former KBO intern, as Jamie mentioned. I went to KBO in 2015 first, and then I stayed as a visitor researcher with my partner, Pedro, for 2 more years. So, and I want to share also a little bit about the path that I trailed through since my undergrad formation, and then all the migration that I did until arriving to the Mantiqueira Bird Observatory that where I work now. So I am a co-founder of the Mantiqueira Bird Observatory, and I'm currently the executive director of this nonprofit organization. And here's also Shannon with her big smile at our field trip. So let me, one more. It's very slow. Not moving, right? Okay. Not moving too fast. So first, I am from Southeast Brazil. So this point in the map in the Atlantic Forest. For my undergrad, I studied in a very nice federal university, but at the time I was studying agoutis in a reintroduction project of inside the main urban park, the Tijuca National Park that stays in Rio de Janeiro. So I knew nothing about birds at that time until I started going up. So I went to the Amazon and I did my master's degree in ecology at the National Institute for Research of the Amazon. It was there where I started learning about birds. For my master project, I studied how parrots are occupying primary and secondary forests. So I wanted to understand how primary and secondary forests are being good or not enough for birds and other wildlife animals. And it was there also where I was first introduced to bending. Here's me in the workshop. And then, so after spending some time bending in the Amazon and learning about bird bending and some more about birds, I went to spend some time as a volunteer at the Costa Rica Bird Observatory. I spent 3 months bending and learning the bending stations there until I finally arrived to KBO just after I flew from Costa Rica to the Plymouth Bird Observatory. That should be showing soon. Okay. So I finally arrived all the way up there in my migratory route. And it was in KBO that, as Jamie mentioned, there I joined the training program of the bird bending training program, where I spent 6 very intense months learning about fieldwork, bird bending, how to bend birds without suffering with their very hard bites, but doing everything very properly, ethically, safely, with prioritizing data quality too. But beyond the field work, we also do have many opportunities to interact with people, learn how to interact, how to talk about the importance of birds, and also spend some time in the office. We did collaboration, especially in the 2 following years when I was there as a visitor researcher. We did collaborate with many studies, understanding data management, and in the back there is in the blackboard. There's a lot of trying to aging birds codes. So we did a lot of that too. And beyond all this learning, field work, people outreach, and computer science, data science, we also learn and open doors for connecting with people, interacting with a lot of new researchers, bird vendors, but people that were developing work as we were like building this kind of work. So that was very inspiring. And after these couple of 3 years that we spent with KBO, and wait until we move forward. So me and my partner, Pedro, we decided to come back to Brazil and start our migratory route back to Southeast Brazil, where we wanted to start a new bird observatory inspired by and based on the Klamath Bird Observatory and all the learning that we brought in our backpack. So just to have a better geographical view of where we are, here with this tiny bird, here is where we established the Mantiqueira Bird Observatory. Here is the Mantiqueira mountain range. In blue here, you can see the Atlantic forest biome, and we are very interested in this biome, and especially in the southeast, where I am from, and Pedro also. In this region, we are in the very threatened biome, and southeast is where we have most of population in Brazil. So it's a lot of people, but also a lot of biodiversity to be protected. Trying to pass. Okay. Oh, it's heavy because there's a video now and I don't want to. Okay, I want to share this video with you. Oh, here is, as Shannon mentioned, the field station where OAMa does the bird monitoring, our longer term bird monitoring. So we are there for 6 years already, and since that is not connecting to share the video with you all, so sorry for that. Connection is not helping today, but you can see in the picture, it was a
Oh, I think we lost Luiza for a second. We'll give her a moment to refresh. Oh, there she is. Thank you everyone for your patience.
Okay, I'm back. It seems that the video just broke the connection. I think so. Okay. Can you see again? Sorry, everyone.
That's okay, Luiza. We can see it.
Okay, so I was sharing a video about our that you could see our food station, but let's move forward once that was giving us trouble. So what is OAMa? The OAMa means Observatório de Aves da Mantiqueira. That's Portuguese for Mantiqueira Bird Observatory. We are a non-profit and independent organization with the mission to build bridges between science, society, and nature through education, awareness, and research to preserve biodiversity. For that, we do bird monitoring research projects, both within our data, but also collaborative work with universities and students. We do bird banding training program, which we try to bring the idea and the model of KBO training program for Brazil. Is the first and still the only training program that we have in the country, and one of the few in Latin America. Not the only for sure, but one of the few. We also do several workshops, both presential and online. And we elaborate and share a lot of informative material. We elaborate and run connecting activities and environmental education. So I will share a little bit of all that we have been doing. For that, we have a big team. It's all done by several hands. We have a relatively small team of full-time dedicated people. As we are in Women in Science Day, majorly women in this organization, what makes me very proud for bringing in so many students and young researchers and people engaged in conservation. Two of these other people beyond me have passed by KBO so far. So in our team, we also have Otávio and now Andresa, who have passed by KBO training program now, and Pedro, of course, beyond me and Pedro. And so in our science and capacity building, we have, I have to move forward. I will just pass more quickly because the computer is not doing timely. So we do a lot of bird banding. We want to understand demography and in the long term, understand what makes populations decline or do well. And here are some of our most common species like white-shouldered fire-eye, the blue mannequin, some thrushes, hummingbirds, tanagers, the white-throated spadebill, that's one of my favorites. And so far we have been monitoring in our bird banding over 160 species that fall in our mist nets. And then we have the not so common, but species that we capture once in a while and are very memorable. Jamie, do you remember the sharp-tailed stream creeper? That one, that's
the stream creeper.
The stream creeper, yeah, she saw last year the field trip, but it's her bird. And we capture once in a while, but rarely in our mist nets because a bird that is very close by water and not so often falls in the net. So, and I don't know how many of you recognize the Viri. There was one individual that was, for a very lucky morning, we captured one individual passing by our mist nets. It's not a common bird, so down in our areas, but it's a migratory from North America. So this guy was doing all these migration. And one phrase about the bird monitoring, something that this phrase is not exactly these words because I couldn't find the wording, but I always remember the whole phrase as a whole. These message I think this is part of what I decided to do with bird monitoring research and all. It's get to know the species in your care so well that you will be able to recognize it and recognize the problems of it in the beginning or earlier. That's the meaning. This overall meaning is in the paper, the Eternal External Threat from Daniel Jansen. And I read this in my undergrad, and I always bring that idea of why it's so important to monitor birds and wildlife. If we do not know the species that we are interacting with and impacting so really well, we won't be able to protect, to do something before we write their obituary. So we don't want to be writing birds' obituary. We want to know about birds, know about their habitats, know their ecology. So we understand when they are declining, why they are declining, what we need to do for stopping that or protecting the most threatened species. And beyond the bird monitoring, we also do, move forward. Okay, those were a few of our trainees, people that passed by. We are starting the 4th year of training program, and these are just a few of the students that were trained by OAMa. And really, it's the only program that they have opportunity to spend time learning. There's no other organization that does that in Brazil. So we also do the science outreach, where we connect with students. We produce a lot of material, events. We do as part of the field trip, as Shannon said, we do a lot of connections. We do visit to bird banding. We also do workshop in partnerships with mushrooms and bird photos and all kind of activities that do sensitivity. We passed by, we also have a program in a national collaboration with the National Action Plan for Conservation of Atlantic Forest Birds, is the Jacuçara program. The name is a joke with the connection of two words: jacutinga, that's an endangered bird of an endemic of Atlantic forest, and the palm tree Jussara, which is very important for several other birds. So these black ball fruit that you see in bird's bill is Jussara. And we have been developing these outreach information nationwide for informing people about the importance of these interactions and the importance of preserving the fruit. And last year we had a visit to fruit extraction in the field trip and eating some of the products of it. Move forward. I think my presentation is very heavy with all these pictures. We also have outreach programs where we produce these informative to talk about cats and dogs impacts in the wildlife, or light pollution, noise pollution, glass collision, animal trafficking, English for that? Well, when you, okay, so we do all these combined between using science to connect and inform society and bring that together for promoting conservation, habitat and birds conservation. And finally arriving, now that I passed through a little bit of OAMa, so finally arriving in our fundraising field trip program and where this came from. And I love this picture because it has me, Jamie and Shannon in a very good moment of the field trip of 2023. And this field trip came from, I don't know exactly how that started, but we were talking about connecting and developing ways, finding ways to develop and support our exchange trainees and programs, bird banding programs in both, beyond borders, really, like in both organizations. And so we developed and have been working through making this field trip really good, not only for the support, but something that goes beyond. Something that is interesting and memorable for everyone that joined, and that's also informative. I think one very special thing about our field trip is that it's elaborated and executed by people in conservation organizations. We are not agencies that are doing trips. We are really in the core effort for conservation, and we are trying to bring that idea for the field trip. So moving a little further, like this is an international trip between US and Brazil, where we do an immersion into the Southeast Atlantic forest. So we're in the surrounding area of the Mantiqueira Bird Observatory. So it's a region, mountain region, where we see a lot of mountains with rainforest, but also we arrive at the very peak. We pass by different habitat and environments, like the altitudinal grass fields of Tachaya National Park, or the very green, wet, and cloudy forests that we pass by. It's a trip to experience and learn about our local efforts to promote science-based conservation. So you will be like, we bring the idea to visit our field work, our field station, the areas. We have talks and we share about not only efforts that OAMa is doing, but also KBO. And a trip for enjoying the landscape and all its wonders. There's many very special, unique species like the Araucaria pine tree, the only pine tree of Brazil. So it's both a field trip for birding, but also for hiking, and we merge. It's not only for people that are really into birding, but everyone that is interested in nature and conservation, and with an interest in some adventures too. And beyond all, like all the enjoyment of the experience, all the time that we share together, that we build this connectivity between among people, is also a way that we are supporting the two nonprofit organizations programs for bird banding, bird monitoring. So it's a trip to support bird and habitat conservation beyond borders with Klamath Bird Observatory and OAMa and Mantiqueira Bird Observatory. And just before finishing, I will try to move just a short way to show how is our program. I won't take long in each slide because otherwise it will take too long time. But we are planning a 10 days trip. I will first be flying. So we are all the way flying from US to São Paulo, and then we'll drive all a few hours until arrive to our first location, where we'll do we'll be in a reserve and learning about the jacutinga, or the blue-billed penguin. That's the endangered species of the Atlantic forest that we are visiting a reintroduction project there, and we'll do some birding and visiting the areas too. And then after the second day, we'll drive from that area to another reserve in Minas. So we are first starting in São Paulo, then we drive all the way to Minas, where we arrive at private reserve, where we're gonna spend some time. This is the private reserve, where we're gonna spend some time in the waterfalls, hiking the trails, birding, learning about the efforts around there. We do a migratory altitudinal migration study there. So we're going to talk more about that with you all, with everyone in the field trip. We also will have the opportunity to visit the highlands of the Itatiaia National Park, with the unique and very special landscape. And as I mentioned, we will be doing the hike to visit the altitudinal migration project, guided by local researchers that are us and this master student who is conducting this research. Then we are moving a little bit further and arriving to the state of Rio, when we visit the lower part of the Itatiaia National Park, with very unique things to areas, swimming holes, very large forest landscape. And after that, we are visiting, spending some time at the project that is the Jussara. So the fruit that the birds were eating that I showed a few slides before. Now we're gonna visit people working with it and transforming the fruit. That's what we want to promote, the consumption for its conservation. And we will experiment their food and drinks, because we don't want them to eat the palm heart. The palm heart is what kills the tree. So we want to promote the fruit consumption as a way to do social and environmental development locally. And then we move to our field station region area. We're gonna visit the bird banding program. We're gonna hike a peak where we're gonna see the Mantiqueira mountain landscape. What is very unique to see the sunset, and then we end our trip in this area and then move back to the airport. So it's basically that overall idea. I hope I haven't talked too much, but so we have time for questions or for whatever you would like to know more about. And that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Luiza. Do we have, does anyone have any questions? Feel free to unmute, or if you're having difficulties, you can throw them in the chat, and we'd be happy to ask them for you. Well, we'll move on to Jamie. Jamie's going to share her experience helping co-lead these trips and her experience in Brazil.
Yeah, you guys can think about some more questions as I do that. But mostly, yeah, I just wanted to follow up Luiza's presentation and say how excited we are to be leading this conservation-based field trip again. We started envisioning this back in 2020, and Luiza and I are ornithologists and conservationists, but we're also people that love to experience other cultures and love to travel. And so we were like, how can we put together a trip that really builds on these programs that we're working on together, supports the science of both organizations, but is also just an amazing experience. And so I've had the opportunity to co-lead it the last 2 years, and both experiences surpassed my expectations. And so I'll echo what Shannon said. First, Luiza and her team just make it so easy and so safe and so seamless when we're in country that is an experience. I haven't done a lot of trips where I've been a participant, and being able to do a trip like that is a great way just to make the most of your time. And then the things that have been able to be showcased they're the type of experiences that you can't get unless you're really traveling with the scientists. And so the ability to go in the field with in addition to us, we've had a lot of other local support for the trips. And so Luiza pulls in, the local folks that she works with to cook the food. And sometimes we've had some cultural experiences and local park guides and supporting that local economy and culture as much as possible as well. So bringing that all together has been really magical. But mostly it's just been the moments that we have in all those days and the connections with the people. So I know Shannon and I think Luiza said this, it's not just for birders. And we started this year's trip teaching somebody how to use binoculars. And so we've had a few folks come in thinking, oh, we're just going to kind of enjoy the nature and leave as birders. Other ones, not so much. And so really the ability to do all those things together and to experience that nature and see the science on the ground and the amazing programs that these folks are running in Brazil. So I don't know, it's pretty amazing. And we can answer any questions you have. Or I don't know if you want to add anything, Shannon.
I was just thinking maybe it would be interesting to know what the weather would be like during that time.
There's also another question. I can answer Shannon first, and then I can answer Darlene. Darlene asked what are the threats to the forest. So I will weather in August. It should be dryish, because we are ending our winter time in August here. So June, July, by the end of the May until mid-July is the peak of winter, lower temperature, but also dry season. So during winter we have very little rain. And in August, so birds are starting to move into breeding time here. So breeding early start in August, then September is the peak, really starting October, November is all breeding time. It's a long breeding period. So in August we expect to be mid-temperature, like Fahrenheit. I always get that Fahrenheit, but 20th Celsius. Does anyone know Celsius by heart there? It's hard to do the conversion when we don't have it. But it would be kind of springtime, a very nice springtime in Nashville, I would say. Like you can wear your 68 Fahrenheit. Thanks, Elva. And so it's a nice weather. If it's not too dry, we might get some rain, but shouldn't be very rainy yet. So we don't want to move forward too much further in the year, because then September, October, especially October, we start the rain season, so we get very wet. And about the threats to the forest. Well, the Atlantic forest is the biome, the forests that have been more deforested in Brazil so far, because we are in the coastal area, so especially urbanization. But since the very beginning of colonization, when Portuguese arrived, this is their area where they have very heavy logging extractions and building. So we have mining, very heavy mining in the area. Nowadays, it's less than 20% of the forest remains in the habitat. So 80% is already gone. And majorly by urbanization, 70% of Brazilian population is in Atlantic forest. So just that blue area that I show in the map holds 70% of Brazilian population. And also is the area where we have São Paulo, like the metropolis. We have Rio de Janeiro, another huge city, and then Minas Gerais, like Belo Horizonte. We have the major cities of the country are all combined in this area. So these are the major threats. But then we still have, for biodiversity, a big threat still is wildlife trafficking. We still have that, caging birds, especially for birds, light pollution. But those are, of course, the major is deforestation for urbanization. And one thing that is interesting is that Atlantic forest is so deforested already that we have very little to keep deforesting, and now the forest is in a start growing movement, because we have many initiatives to reforestation and cattle and other products, agricultural products are not profitable anymore in this area. So these fields are being left behind in doing restoration for forests in those areas. So we are in this effort to grow forest now in the Atlantic forest, other than keeping it diminishing. Okay, so how about the hikes, distance, elevation change, flexibility? So what we have been doing in our field trips is, before deciding how long we will hike and which areas we will hike, we will have our group set up. Because all these areas that we have, that I showed a little bit here, we have a plethora of hikes that you could decide for. Which one we take, how long, how intensity. So I would say that it could go from something very adventurous, like getting to the peak of Pedra Selada, that's very high, and coming down during dark after seeing the sunset, or we could do more slowly and spending more of our time. We are very flexible, but we want to get the program clear to everyone once we have our group set up. Like once we have everyone that is coming, we will decide together like these we can go that far, we don't want to go that push that far. And we also have optionals, like we don't want, people are free to decide to not do part of it. We always have more than one person, local person with the group, so we can split if needed. So we like to say that everything is optional and we are highly flexible, but we want to adjust all the program together beforehand. Does that make sense? Is that correct, accurate, Jamie and Shannon? Very towards that, right?
Maybe just as another example, talk about, the way we hiked into OAMa itself. We had a couple different paces.
So do you want me to talk about?
I forget
I
the distance and
can.
the elevation gain. Do you
Oh
know it?
yes, yeah. So during some of our hikes, like arriving at the Obama Field Station, you come, the car arrive in the area just into like a parking place, and then we have to hike in the forest for about 1 kilometer. That's less than a mile. But we gain 100 meters altitudinally. So that can be done in 20 minutes or can be done in 1 hour. And the whole way we have like people that want to move forward, and we'll have someone leading the way. One of our crew will be leading the way and another person will be in the back. So we can have each person doing your own pace to arrive at these more strategical spots. So we do have some hikes. It is a hiking trip, and so there's a lot of walk. I wouldn't say that they are too adventurous, but we could add some more adventure or less depending on the group desire.
Yeah, I remember when
Shannon
I
and
went.
I are also really willing to talk to anybody one-on-one. If you want to talk, really specifically about kind of where you're at and what you're looking for, and we can give you kind of some more specifics. If you want to follow up with Shannon or I, we can share our contact info at the end.
I was remembering 2 years ago how Barbara really chose to just enjoy sitting more. And that was completely fine. I mean, it's such a small group. We can really cater to people and, you know, safe and friendly and easy and very personal is what I remember.
Do we have any more questions for Luiza or Jamie or Shannon? What about plane fare?
About what?
The cost of the
Sorry.
plane.
Plane fare. Yeah, plane fare is not
Prices.
included. Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, so airfare is not included, but everything after you arrive in Sao Paulo is included. And so all the in-country transportation and hotels and food, with the exception of some incidentals and optional alcoholic beverages if you chose that. But the airfare is not included. And I want to say the last 2 years when I traveled there, it ranged from like maybe $1,400 to $1,600 per ticket. You might be able to get something for $1,200, especially if you go like to the East Coast. But it's going to be over 1,000. Let me say that. But you can price it out too. Take a look and see what the itineraries are from where you're based, but definitely think about that ahead of time.
And Jamie,
The
that just
flights
makes
are surprisingly easy. There's a lot of ways to get there, which is nice. Sorry, go ahead, Elva.
could either of you talk about maybe some of the alternatives that people have done before getting to Brazil, like add-ons that they've done?
When I went 2 years ago, I would say about a fourth of the group had other plans afterwards, and Luisa even helped them with their itineraries to some extent. I mean, they kind of had some ideas. Brasilia, I think it's like the fifth largest country in the world. It's like huge. And so there's a lot of options to travel and be in just a lot of variety of places in Brazil. I just stayed a day or two in Rio de Janeiro with my friend Robin because we wanted to surf and swim. But many people went to the Amazon and again, I think Luisa and Sammy, the guide, were helpful in facilitating that. It's a 10-day trip, and some people felt like since they went there for 10 days, they wanted to do more in Brazil. I only wanted to do a day or two more. So that's that.
Yeah, I can help a little. I forgot to mention that's important too. Yeah, for those that want to spend more time, both in both previous years, we had people wanting to visit Pantanal, what's amazing too. And we facilitate, we already have contact with people that do the tour there, that do the guiding, and were really well recommended, well evaluated about after the trip. So we can help with guiding you through where to go, finding a local guide, finding a good place to do before trip or after trip. And also there are other programs that I could even share. We have partners in the Fernando de Noronha Island, more in the southeast, not southeast, northeast, and they shared with me their visitor programs because they know that we are doing this trip, so we could share that with anyone interested as well, or helping you to connect with people in other parts of the country. So that could be helpful too.
I think we're hoping it'll be a trip of maybe 10 people, if I'm right or wrong. But anyway, maybe Elva could put like my phone contact in the chat in case, I mean, sometimes you just have to ask me like personal questions, or maybe Jamie's contact information in the chat, or maybe even Luisa's, because she can do email. If you have a personal question you want to ask, that's not maybe something you want to ask on the Zoom, feel free to do that. We're very excited to potentially support OAMa's work for the next year. And we're hoping to have 10 people, I would say, on the trip, because that would actually make it so that OAMa would have, I believe, the money they need to do the work that they want to do for the next year. So, yeah.
Thanks, Jenna.
Okay, I'm gonna help Elva transition because one of the things when we were talking about Women in Science and KBO's travel trips that came up the other day when I was talking with Ryan Terrell, our science director, was the Bear Divide trip. And this is another trip that Elva had the opportunity to co-lead last year that involves a strong group of women leading some research in Southern California. And we just thought since you guys are here interested in both of those topics, Elva would just give a few minutes on that additional opportunity if you're interested in some in-country travel.
Thank you, Jamie. Oh, you're good. Oh, maybe. Nope. Sorry. There it is. Okay. Yeah, so our science director, Brian Terrell, and myself have been, this will be our second year, leading a group down to what's called Bear Divide. It's near Burbank, California, in the Pasadena Mountains. And it's a really cool migratory hotspot in the Pacific Flyway. So it's a very unique valley area. So we kind of drive up above the city. And so you can kind of see in Kelsey's photo how far you can see out. And so on a nice sunny morning, you can see very far in the valley. We sit right kind of on top of the peak of the valley. And so the birds, as they're migrating through, are flying right past your head. So it's a very amazing experience. It's the only place in the Pacific Northwest that has this kind of phenomenon. There's a couple of spots on the East Coast. But these are some of the women that are leading a bird banding station as well as the point count program, where a lot of the data they're collecting is also being used in the labs that they're a part of as grad students or undergrads. And so when we travel there, we also donate a portion of proceeds to them to help them buy supplies and keep this volunteer bird banding station running, setting this really important migratory hotspot. And it's a lot of fun. We get up pretty early. We head out of the hotel around 5:30 to drive up the mountain to get there right when the sun is rising. And then we have optional field trips in the afternoon. So you're more than welcome to take the rest of the day off, take a nap, read a book by the pool at the hotel, or travel with us. We have some other birding spots in the area, which include going and seeing the Pasadena parrots, which was a really fun experience that we had last time, finding a group of parrots that are living in LA on the streets with local community members, with our scopes out, doing some community education about the parrots in the community. But I'm happy to answer any questions about this trip as well.
Elva, did I see that Ryan's giving a full presentation on it sometime soon?
Yes, so yeah, we just had it announced in the Klamath Call notes. So if you're on the email list, you might have seen it. But Ryan will be giving a talk about the migratory pathway that leads through Bear Divide, kind of a preview on what to expect. Well, I think we're gonna, if unless anyone has any last questions, I don't know, Marion, are you waving or do you have a question? I see
Hi,
some
Marion.
fluttering fingers.
It's great to talk about trips that they're really not for profit. They're just to help conservation. And I think we're all in a time where we want to do whatever we can do. And maybe this is a fit for you, maybe it's not. But anyway, we're so appreciative for you coming and just getting to know more about the Klamath Bird Observatory and about Luiza in Brazil and about Jamie and about Elva. We love the Klamath Bird Observatory, and we're just so glad that you came tonight. So thank you very much. Contact me if you have any questions.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you,
Everyone.
everyone, for being here.
Thank you so much. It was very informative.
Mm.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.